立法會主席
The President.
Members,
just now Ms. Eunice Yong proposed to move an adjournment debate according to RoP 16(2). The wording of the proposed debate has been tabled. The new district council election will take place this Sunday. Whether the election can take place in a fair and just manner is of public concern. After detailed consideration, I'm of the view that Ms. Eunice Yong's proposal has an urgent importance to the public, and the wording of the motion has been made in a neutral manner. That is why I am going to approve the proposed debate. I'd like to point out that RoP 16(2) does not stipulate that officials should attend the debate. However, I have already liaised with the administration, and I am given to understand that the SCMA and USCMA will attend the debate to listen to members. I'd like to remind members that every member can only speak once for 15 minutes. Members who wish to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. I will now ask Ms. Eunice Yong to speak and move her motion. President, according to RoP 16(2), I move this adjournment debate, the wording of which has been presented to members. I'd like to thank the President for allowing this debate. I am asking the administration to hold a fair election which is free of violence. We are going to have this election, but then the risk factor has been a serious one. Many members of the public are thinking whether the Sunday election will be fair, just, and safe. Since time is pressing, well, I thought that I could ask an urgent question. However, this is an important matter of public concern, and the question time will be very limited, so I have decided to move an adjournment debate so there will be more time for members to speak to the administration. The election is just a few days away. How can we make sure that it will be fair, just, and safe? It is a matter of urgency to the public. I hope members will be given time to discuss the issue. I hope the administration will listen to members and make your greatest efforts in the time remaining in order to make effective measures to make sure that the election will be fair, just, and safe. There are just 4 days to the election. Since the nomination period in October, there have been attacks on candidates in many districts. They have been threatened. Some ward offices of incumbent members have been vandalized and set on fire. Some candidates have seen that posters have been and also pamphlets and banners have been put up which are there to smear candidates, and also there are pamphlets and posters being vandalized, and there are also netizens saying that they will block voters from going to polling stations, and people are worried about the safety of candidates, polling staff, and also electors. The Hong Kong Cross Harbour Tunnel is still blocked, and there are many roads that are blocked, and people are asking the administration how it can ensure that staff and electors can access polling stations. Can polling stations operate normally? Can people approach polling stations safely? And that candidates and their teams will not be subject to threats and violence. Mr. Nip, you are here. Thank you, SCMA, for coming to the LegCo at such short notice. The day before yesterday, you said that you would set 3 conditions for the election to go ahead as scheduled. 1, to stop violence and threats. 2, that there will not be blockade to roads and tunnels. Number 3, that transport facilities should not be vandalized. And you have said that you are going to expand the no electioneering area so you can make it safer. Last Saturday, the chairman of the EAC, Judge Feng, said on radio that it would pay close attention to the situation and make contingency measures in view of the prevailing situation so as to raise the awareness of staff at polling stations. He also appealed to members of the public to remain calm and rational and not allow violence to affect the elections. And electors should not be disturbed by violence or other inappropriate acts. President, what I'd like to know most is how the administration can make sure that the election will be safe and fair. Well, it seems you have been talking about it a lot. You said you would be doing an assessment. You said on the news the day before yesterday that you would make daily assessments. But what kind of assessments are you going to make? What scenarios have you predicted? The ICAC has told us that until the 14th of November, they have received 201 pursuable complaints with regard to this election, 67 of which had to do with the resorting to violence and threats by candidates and themes. Well, this is a big increase compared to 9 in the last election. And also there have been 151 other complaints with regard to the provision of entertainment and food and other misconduct. And then the others have to do with fake and misleading representation. And all this would amount to bribing electors and other people. Okay, these are the complaints received by the ICAC. Is it that they will wait until the candidates lose and then they make election petitions? I think that would be too passive. When you see such a large number of complaints, what kind of positive measures can you take to tell the public which are violent acts and which acts are likely to go against the fairness and safe conduct of an election? President, we see violence every day, and this is directed towards candidates more often than not. And this month, we have seen candidates being attacked when they mounted street publicity. Mr. Ho was one of the victims. He was attacked with a knife, and it is fortunate that his life was not endangered. But this is not any conduct that is acceptable to society. The law says, of course, that this is a breach, and the attacker has been arrested and will be prosecuted. He is prosecuted for attempted murder. But is that enough to tell the public that violence should not be tolerated? Apart from physical violence, which is affecting the DC election, we see other problems as well. The pamphlets of candidates sometimes carry smears. I think this is a kind of pamphlet violence or verbal violence. Sometimes the pamphlets are just posted without giving the source. Some of them are posted on people's banners in housing estates. What measures can the administration take to clear away such illegal pamphlets? The ICC or EAC, will they take active action to investigate, or do they just wait for complaints to come forward? But then, in fact, there is no way to lodge a complaint because you just do not know the source of such pamphlets. If we want to have a fair and just election, we need the cooperation of members of the public. We were talking about violence. And violence is not just what we see, but what we say, President and the Secretary, you can see that a lot of violent acts are in the form of incitement and publicity online. On Telegram and LIHKG, you can see different degrees of threats and intimidation. And I can tell you what has been proposed. They are being invented every day. The first one is a filial son action. What does it mean? It says that elderly people, well, in fact, this kind of online publicity targets the elderly, saying that if the elderly do not elect a certain candidate, then on the 24th of November, they should be taken on a trip. This is something started by netizens. Secondly, some netizens propose that on election day, at the homes of the elderly, they should apply for welfare from the government, and by so doing, cheat the elderly people out of their ID cards so the elderly people cannot vote. And then on Facebook, some people are forwarding such possibly illegal proposals, so they circulate more widely online. Does this amount to telling people how to prevent people to vote? And does this amount to aiding and abetting? And have you seen this? And are you telling people that this should not be done because it is a possible contravention of the laws and also the possible consequences? Because we can't see the administration doing anything about such rumors being circulated online. I don't see you taking any positive action to prevent this from further spreading. Apart from those two things that I measured, there are others, saying that they form themselves into groups of 10 and they would guard the doors of the elderly homes so elderly people cannot go to vote, and then they would call 1823 saying that it is suspected that elderly people are taken away, or there are elderly people who do not return to the elderly home, or they will cheat the elderly people saying that they are no longer eligible so they cannot vote, or saying that they would rumor that the election has been cancelled so there is no need to go and vote. Now, if you should know about such incitement or rumors online, what have you done? Can you do something? Secretary, you told the public what measures you would take, but I don't think you are doing enough. You are not keeping abreast with developments. And it is not just road blockade or violence. Online information is circulated so fast, you really have to keep an eye on it. When you know about such messages, what have you done to tell people that they should not be doing this? And the last thing that I mentioned was that on that day, if somebody should rumor that the election has been cancelled, what channels will you use to rectify that message, to tell the public that in fact the election is on and that your polling station remains the same? Will there be any measures to let the public know and the electors know that the polling stations have remained the same? Well, I understand some polling stations have changed places. Are you telling the electors affected where the new polling station is and the polling hours so that they will not go to the wrong places? Do the elderly know about it? Or is it that you are just posting the election cards to them? Mr. Nip, you told us days ago that you would tell people not to meddle with the election. You said anyone trying to affect the election would be breaching the law, that they would be fined $500,000 and imprisoned for 7 years. Is it enough for you to tell people to stop? Well, we are always telling the rioters to stop, but are they listening? Even if you tell them how heavy the penalty is, they are not going to listen. Apart from telling them the consequences in terms of penalty, what positive measures can you take? President, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind the public that anyone who uses threats with the purpose of blocking people from going to the polling station, that is a breach of the law, and anyone who is trying to interfere with polling or doing anything to the ballot boxes, that is again a breach. But how can you protect the polling stations, the ballot boxes, and that the public can really reflect their wishes at a polling station? How can we have a fair and just election? We really want to hear the SCMA tell us about that here in Council. So we need a fair election. We should say no to violence. We hope we can rebuild Hong Kong and rebuild our future. That is what I like to say.
I propose a question to you that the adjournment debate moved by Ms. Yun be passed. Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs. First, I would like to thank Ms. Yong for moving this adjournment motion for the upcoming DC election to see how we can conduct an open, fair, and just election. Me and my colleague will carefully listen to the members' comments. First, I will give the key points of the government's position for the DC general election will be held on 24th of November. That's the 6th general election to elect 432 DC councillors. And this had the effective nominations about 1,090 candidates. There were more than one candidate for all the constituency. We're only 4 days from the election. The government's position has been clear that we will do our utmost for the smooth conduct of election. The 4.13 million voters' rights are at stake. They hope to exercise this right to elect their representative. Just like Ms. Young said, we hope to have a fair and just election that denounce violence. We share the common goal. These elections involve a lot of manpower and organization, on which there are 610 polling stations and 20,000 polling staff. In the past few months, the government and the Electoral Affairs Committee, an independent statutory body in charge of overseeing elections, have been preparing for this and hoping that election can be conducted in a peaceful, safe, and just manner. We also take note that this DC election is faced with enormous challenges due to the social environment and the violent incidents in the past months. And in the past, we see the candidates been assaulted and their ward office vandalized. And during canvassing, that the publicity materials and the banners have been destroyed and intimidated. The government strongly condemned these violent acts, and any intimidation and attacking of the candidates and the staff is all illegal. According to EIECO, the convention is a criminal offense, maximum imprisonment for 7 years and a $500,000 fine. The candidates should notify the law enforcement agency when come across any incidents, and they will be pursued vigorously. And ICAC today had reported the number of complaints received and point out that some of the acts will be in a criminal offense and alert the public to take note. The DC election also have a petition mechanism. According to the DCO section 749 and 50, if 10 or more voters see that the process there were widespread inequality, they will petition to the court to challenge the result of the election. And over the past weekend and for quite some time, we see that in Hong Kong, the violence had escalated. The rioters have been using lethal weapons to attack police officers and setting on fire and blocking tunnels and roads, destroying railway facilities, seriously paralyzing Hong Kong traffic. This severely disrupted the daily life of the public. The government is determined to curb the violence to restore law and order in the rule of law. The recent violent acts have upped the challenge of holding a fair election and also edge our concerns. We hope to ensure the election to be conducted safely and fairly, and the departments and the EAC have been preparing. The government have held a multi-interdepartment meetings, and in accordance to the law, we have this emergency contingency plans. In the contingency plans, we have this contingency committee in which they can advise the EAC, and this emergency management committee and will monitor the activities during polling day. And on the polling day, the few aspects we will look out at for this successful conduct of election. First, we ensure that the 20,000 polling staff can arrive at the assigned polling station on time, so that they can be open from 7:30 a.m. And another, that the candidates and the canvassing staff can conduct electioneering activities free from threat and peacefully. And for the 600 polling stations will not be disrupted or vandalized. To achieve this, we need to come up with different measures, which include, like Ms. Young said, that we will expand the no canvassing and the no staying area, so that the voters would have a bigger buffer area free from any nuisance. And we'll also ensure our security will involve the police, the civil aid service, and other outsourced security company personnel station and polling station to cope with any safety risk. And just in case, the fire service department would have this rapid response team to put out any fire and other incidents at the polling stations. And for the deployment and the operation details, we're probably not in a position to disclose, but we will put the safety of the polling station on the paramount position. We hope the poll can be conducted safely and peacefully and fairly. And however, we need to prepare for the extreme situations. And under the DCO, it had contained such provision, which included chief executive, the EAC, or the polling officer, if the voting and the counting of the votes that due to open violence or disturbances or any event that would threaten public safety, that will let destruction, or they could postpone the general election for the voting and the counting of votes. Only that when we have no other option, that we will postpone the election across the territory or individual constituencies. To postpone the election in a very difficult position. Like I said, only when we had no choice, then we will invoke the ordinance to take this step. On polling day, the election cannot proceed in the tense and violent atmosphere. The public and the government will need to be prepared for this. However, some violent acts and violent protesters, if they don't stop, that would definitely affect whether the election can be conducted safely and orderly. Whether we can conduct the election on November 24th, we must take into account of the actual operations and the safety, of which 3 key points must be fulfilled. First, the violence and intimidation must stop, and the major thoroughfares are not blocked. And 3, stop the destruction of traffic facilities. On that day, there are 20,000 polling workers. If any of the above happens, it would directly affect the proceeding of the vote. We have been closely monitoring the situation every day and assess the safety risk in order to determine whether we would invoke our statutory powers to postpone the election. Our goal is to do our utmost so that the election can be conducted safely on that day. The government will definitely do its part. And for quite some time, in multiple occasions and press conferences, I have said that if the election cannot be held on the same day, what will be the consequences and also the challenges we're facing. And for some misleading statements on social media, we have clarified them through different channels, and in order to disseminate the correct information. Once again, I appeal to people in society with different backgrounds and political views. For the election to be held smoothly and peacefully, we must clearly say no to violence, and we should not condone violence acts. Since this district council election is an important platform to let the 4.2 million voters to elect their representatives, and our voters will very much treasure this opportunity. In the next few days, we can work together to create a safe and fair environment for the smooth conduct of elections. Me and my colleague will listen to the views of the members before I'm making a response. I so submit. The meeting is now adjourned and returned by 5:15.